from the New York Sun. Trump lawyer Mike Davis threatens Letitia James with prison in fiery podcast tirade.
Was this real? I saw this going around.
Yes,
I thought it was
have
fake.
the video for you from Benny Johnson's show.
No.
I thought it was fake too. When Phil told me, I said, Phil, there's no way that's real.
Let me just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term. Because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights. And I promise you that. So think long and hard before you want to violate President Trump's constitutional rights or any other American's constitutional rights.
Look at Benny's
it's not going to
face.
happen again.
We've been warning people on the show, Mike. This isn't the same Trump administration. Stop messing around. Don't rig elections. Don't illegally vote.
I think I would like to see a special investigation, a special prosecutor counsel to review the falsifying business records case out of New York because there is no underlying crime.
Right.
So for those that aren't familiar with the story, Trump was charged with 34 counts of felony falsifying of business records, but that requires an underlying crime. They said it was falsifying records in furtherance of another crime and never named what the other crime was.
That's the only way that it could be, because it would have been a misdemeanor,
Right.
and the statute of limitations would have expired by the time they brought it. So they had to raise it to a felony, and in order to raise it for a felony, they have to show that it was in furtherance of some underlying crime, which they couldn't name and the jury couldn't name.
Yeah, they never actually named the initial crime. So the idea that he was actually legally or legitimately convicted, that is a farce.
Plus, you
on
saw
its face.
already Jack Smith dropped the 2020 overturning the election case, which was wise of him to do. However, this to your point, to the point that everyone is making on this panel, what the Democrats have done, what was the greatest threat to our democracy, our sacred constitution, our republic that we have seen in recent memory, certainly in any of our lifetimes. And there does need to be some consequence for that, not out of cruelty, not because we want to just pound our enemies into the dust, but because if there is not retribution for injustices, you can fall into one of two errors when there's an injustice. You can be excessive and cruel, that's wrong, and you can be remiss and encourage further injustice and further threats to our country. We can't fall into the latter error here. We need to make sure that there is a just and appropriate punishment, or it's just going to happen again.
That's equality under the law.
That's right.
That's all we're saying. And this is what the Kamala campaign got mad at me for. I said that if we're going to go after anybody when Trump gets elected, it should be for real crimes. Yep. There must be evidence. Judges need to sign off on warrants. It's got to be all above board and done by the book perfectly. And we know there are people who have done wrong. Merrick Garland should be in jail for contempt of Congress. That happened.
This unequal application of the law is why I think so many Republicans struggle to condemn harshly January 6th when they see what happened during the George Floyd riots and all the support they got from Democrats. I believe Kamala Harris even had a bail fund set up.
It's still up. It's still on her
It's
Twitter.
still up for the people who are committing crimes throughout the George Floyd riots. But if any Republican were to do that for any of the January 6th people who were arrested on January 6th, it would be...
They'd be arrested themselves, probably.
That's absolutely
So the
right.
unequal application of the law here is really the issue. And that's why I have reluctance condemning a lot of the people who were arrested on January 6th. That's not to say that nobody did anything wrong, but
of course,
when Nancy Pelosi takes a knee in support of George Floyd and the BLM movement, at the same time, it's like, these aren't honest actors. So that's why I really struggle with some of that stuff.
Yeah. We talk a lot in American political culture about authoritarianism, and it's this big, scary word. But if you would ask me to give a definition of what authoritarianism actually is, it's not when there's a lot of rules, and it's not even when rules are strictly enforced. It's when there's a lot of rules for the people, and those in power have no rules. I believe that authoritarianism is not when there are too many rules. It's when there are too few rules
Capriciously
for your
enforced.
government.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to fail to punish elected officials who abuse their power is not merciful. It's cruelty to the governed.
Yeah.
Speaking
That sounds
of
like Adam Smith to me.
Speaking of pardons, do you think that Donald Trump should consider a pardon for Hunter Biden?
Yes.
Michael
No.
Knowles?
Oh, wait. I take it
Not
back.
if he
No.
were to do something like that, like not until everyone
On a
involved is
conciliatory
fixed.
note.
Hunter Biden should not be pardoned because he needs to win. I want Hunter Biden to win. You want Hunter Biden to win. You know why?
Why?
Because he is being criminally charged for self-incrimination on the Nix form.
Yeah.
If he wins the Supreme Court and makes the argument, I should not have to self-incriminate when purchasing a firearm.
Right,
They
right.
throw that out. We get rid of this required self-incrimination.
No, he should be prosecuted for the serious crimes he committed,
Exactly.
not the low-hanging fruit nonsense.
Gun rights advocate Hunter Biden now.
That's right. Yeah.
I am not
take
going
it.
to get emotional and demand that he suffer because I can't stand his family or anything like that. I say this idea that we have a right against self-incrimination and the feds require you to tell them if you have in possession of or a user of illegal drugs is literally the government saying, tell us you've committed a crime so we can restrict your rights. Your right to keep and bear arms shall only be restricted through due process. That is penalty for some kind of violation. If you violate our laws, we can say, okay, well, you can't have a gun now. We can also lock you in a box for a long time. Hunter Biden was going to buy a weapon, and the government said, tell us if you committed a crime or not, self-incriminate, and then if you say yes, you can't have a gun. So he said no, he's charged for it. I think the Supreme Court should throw it out.
Yeah, maybe they should prosecute him for selling state influence to the Ukrainians and the Chinese. That's probably a more serious
Tax
crime to
evasion.
go after. It's tax evasion.
They have to dink him with the lower level stuff
actually-
so we could overlook the Burisma, all the Burisma stuff.
Right,
No,
right.
we'll get him on this gun charge.
Even the tax stuff is questionable. Because they're saying that he failed to pay, and I'm like, okay, hold on. I believe the penalty for failure to pay should be you have to pay. That's it. So going after a guy who's got the money and you're like, but you didn't pay on time, I'm like, I don't know.
But how else were we going to get Al Capone,
Well, I do think I do think it's fair to say that in some circumstances, particularly with Hunter, is he intended to conceal the money so that he didn't have to pay.
Yeah.
That's different from just not paying.
Sophisticated tax evasion.
Yeah, absolutely. Very sophisticated. I mean, Hunter, he's
But all the
a mastermind.
libertarians are like, nope, pardon him on that too because taxation is theft. I'm not on that boat though.
you know what is theft though? Yeah, the libertarians say taxation is theft, and I don't think that's true. But I read a good article the other day that inflation is theft.
Inflation is
Inflation is legitimately theft, and it's a very regressive form of theft. It hits the poorest people the hardest. But the government has no right to just recklessly inflate the currency because they think they're going to buy themselves a few political favors.
I think
that is theft from people.
It is
It acts as a tax
It is.
on people.
It's
because
worse
the
than
government
tax.
is
But it's
printing
worse
money
than
and
that.
making their money worthless.
Well, actually, so part of the reason that coins have ridges on them is because back when money was gold or silver or some precious metal, people would shave little bits off of the edge of the currency so that they could make extra money for themselves. If that is theft, then inflation is theft because it's just an abstract way of the Fed attempting to do the exact same thing.
Right.
Because, like, I'm a little bit of a nerd about this, but like I understand the argument that 2% inflation or really low inflation consistently it spurs growth. It makes people want to go ahead and
It might be
spend their money.
inevitable in certain economic systems.
Possibly, yeah. And deflation can turn into a deflationary spiral. That's true too.
Yeah.
But that's not an excuse for the government to print money to pay to their preferred groups or to big companies when they're printing money at 0% interest, which they did for a decade after 2008. They gave it to the banks at 0% interest rates. Yes, the savings was passed on to the people. You could get a mortgage for 3% at the best rates, but still, they were giving that money to the banks. The banks were buying stocks, buying things. They were buying stuff that was going to go up in value that was not dollars. And that turns into a massive transfer of wealth from the population, because they still have to pay taxes, to the richest.
Yes,
right?
yeah. At 30% in 3 years is a lot different
That's
than maybe
huge.
2% in a year.
Yes, that's huge. And
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say they also make it as difficult as possible to escape inflation. So, for example, the fact that capital gains are not indexed for inflation, I believe, is criminal. Let's say you decide that the dollar is going to start to crash. You're not going to be able to retain the value of your savings, so you go and buy stock. Okay, so let's say the value of the dollar gets cut in half. Therefore, your stock doubles in value, even though no actual wealth was gained. When you sell that to get your value back, that half that you increased, that 100% increase, which was really just keeping up with inflation, is taxed as if it's profit.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. I agree. That's a good policy.
I mean,
Yeah, thank you. Let's get that in Project 2025.
Let's go, baby.
We had Paul Dans, I think his name was, for Project 2025, and he brought us a bag and a mug, And so they're at our studio sitting around.
That's
so I'm just
great.
excited for when the liberals come, and only a couple have, and it's just like the prominently displayed.
Did they
I hope
give you, though,
see-
the special Project 2025 cage that they're going to lock all the liberals in and all that?
Well,
It's not a cage, an Iron Maiden.
the Iron Maiden guillotine.
Yeah, there were 3 Iron Maidens, but the truck couldn't get into the driveway, so we just unfortunately.
That's fair.
Yeah, I love the Project 2025 paranoid delusional state because actually I looked through Project 2025 and it's a lot of it doesn't go that far.
No.
And I was like, like some of these things are like we need reform. I can't remember exactly what it was, but like reforms in the Department of Education. I was like, we want to get rid of that one.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like reforms in this department, and I'm like, we want to get rid of those too.
Well, I think their income tax restructuring or readjustment for the brackets is a very reasonable policy. If you've actually looked at it, it would cut taxes for people making, between $47,000 and $168,000 per year, which is a huge subsection of the middle class and even some wealthier people. Then above 168K, some people's taxes actually go up a little bit. But the point is, what it does is it creates a 15% and a 30% tax bracket. And anyone making less than 168K per year pays 15%. Any income you have above that gets taxed at 30%. That would cut taxes for a lot of the middle class. It's more reasonable than a flat tax is because right now we can't afford that just because if we want to keep revenue up, because flat tax would raise taxes on the lower class or a lot. So Project 2025 has a very reasonable...
No. It's terrible. It's terrible. I completely disagree. I'm in favor of a progressive tax.
Of course.
Where we only tax progressives.
Yeah, that's good. The one area I thought Project 2025 went too far was deporting all the lesbians to Bolivia, which is on page 52. That was too much.
It says to Lesbos. They want to send them to Lesbos.
The Greek island.
Well, you do know that's where the word comes
Yes,
from.
yeah.
What is really rich
And
is
I've been there, and it is
How was it?
Flannels everywhere.
migrants,
Subarus. It's all you can drive.
refugee camps, paranoia, crime, and I walked to the shore and watched like refugees. If you can call, I think they're economic migrants largely, but some refugees literally swim on the shore and walk past me.
And you just saw
Greece.
the ships importing flannel and Subarus and jean jackets
Saturns.
From China.
Saturn.
It's rich because conservatives are laying out their Project 2025. This is exactly what they were trying to do. But as opposed to the Kamala Harris campaign, where it's like, we really don't have any idea of what you're trying to do.
They didn't have a
moving forward.
platform on their website
Nothing.
for months.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Brat Coconut Tree. Excuse me.
Coconut,
Brat Coconut Tree. Yeah.
I think I could finally dance along to that song now.
Isn't it crazy that Brat Summer didn't actually take with working class
Yeah,
voters?
losing the Rust Belt is so brat.
So
It's
brat.
Yeah, the whole brat thing just seemed so contrived.
Yeah.
I think that was the issue with basically your whole campaign.
Everything.
It was, I love Doritos. I'm full of joy. Like, if people who tell you several times a day that they're really filled with joy, I think 100% of the time you can count on not very joyful people.
Do you think Joe Biden would have fared better?
Yes.
And how much?
I don't think he would have won, but I think he would have fared better.
At
I
least
thought
one
it
of
from
the
the
Rust
beginning.
Belt states.
Yes,
would've-
yeah. Of course, he's Joe Biden. Look,
he's from
in
Scranton,
decline.
too,
He's from
Pennsylvania.
Scranton. He tells us constantly. But Joe Biden, whatever you want to say about him, guy's a pretty good politician. The guy got elected to the Senate before it was constitutionally eligible. Okay?
Only guy to beat Trump. in the
Only
last-
guy to, yeah,
allegedly.
some say, yeah. And the guy is pretty impressive. He's been in national politics for over half a century. So you're a Democrat strategist. You think, I know what we'll do. We'll boot this guy out because he's a little slower. By the way, Joe Biden, I say this in charity to him, was never the brightest bulb in the pack. So he was always good at glad-handing and simpering. And you think, okay, we're going to replace that guy with a woman who no one has ever expressed any affection for. How's that going to turn out?
Who in the primary was at most single digits when she ran in 2020.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.